just remembering what happened on the day called Yom Kippur. Yom mean day, Kippur mean atonement. So Yom Kippur is a day of atonement that would happen once per year, when the high priest would bring first blood sacrifice for himself into the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was, and make atonement first for his sin and then for the sins of the whole house of Israel. And all the people of Israel would have gathered outside, and before the high priest could go in, as I stated before, only once per year could this be done, and only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies. But before he goes into the Holy of Holies, he had to had the bells on his tunic, and they would be making noise as he walked. Something else that they had to do was to tie a rope around his waist, that when he goes in, he would constantly be walking around. Why? Because a high priest could not sit, because the work for salvation could not be completed until the perfect lamb was sacrificed, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. So while he was making atonement and confessing the sins of the whole house of Israel, he would be walking around in the Holy of Holies, in the very presence of God. And tied to his waist, as stated before, would be this rope, and they would hold the other end of that rope on the outside, because they could not go inside. What was the purpose of the rope? That if he was to die inside the Holy of Holies, then they had the opportunity or the way of pulling him out by using that rope, because no one could enter in to get him out. But how would they know that he died? That God did not accept their sacrifice. If their sacrifice was wrong, and if it wasn't in accordance with the prescribed order of God, he would die. So that's the purpose of the rope. But how would they know that he died? Because they cannot see the high priest once he's in the Holy of Holies. That's where the bells come in. The bells were placed on his at the end of, or the hem of his tunic, that while he was walking around, the people would be silent and listening, and as long as they heard those bells ringing, they knew that God have accepted their sacrifice. So their joy would be full, because they would be forgiven for at least one more year. So the scripture said, blessed are the people who know the joyful sound. So they were joyful because their sins were forgiven. My question to you today: since the perfect lamb was slain, and since we have no more need for a rope or bells around the tunic of the high priest, because God the Father have accepted for all eternity the appeasing sacrifice of his Son for sin. My question to you: do you know the joyful sound of God's forgiveness? If not, you can know that tonight. You can know that today. You can know that right now by accepting Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, the salvation of God. That is the prescribed order of God. That is the source of eternal life. To accept the acceptable sacrifice of God as your own. You can do that today, right now, and live for all eternity in the presence of God.